Welcome to the Kindness Project, the podcast designed to share stories of kindness and share how kindness can make positive change in our world, one small act at a time.
This week on the Kindness Project, we talk about book collections, Hay Literary Festival, and the second part of the interview with Tasha from the Butterfly Effect.
Welcome to the Kindness Project. I'm joined by a girl whose acting career is on par with Mr. Nicolas Cage's. It's Charlotte Danes.
Oh, I feel bad.
I
feel bad for Nicolas Cage. And I'm joined by the man who's the clock on his wall in the office says read, and that's exactly what he does.
That is true. I do read a lot. I mean,
we're sitting right now in the office.
So we're sitting in the Home Office, aren't we?
Yes.
And what we did in the Home Office is get a bunch of bookshelves built so that we could just store the growing collection of our books. And to be honest, our recent trip to the Hay Literary Festival didn't make it any better, did it?
You got 9 books just for yourself.
I did, and bought books for everybody in the family. I tell you what, though, if you love books, you've got to take a visit to Hay, haven't you? I mean, that is the place. We were there for the festival, but just wandering around Hay, just around the bookshops and seeing what you can find is incredible. I absolutely loved it. So who's better at acting, you or Nicolas Cage? Nicolas Cage. I mean, he's been in more stuff that you'd know about, but I'm not convinced that makes him...
Yeah, my performance in the school's version of Little Shop of Horrors was very good.
Yeah, your version of Face Off. Oh, no, you weren't in that. Your version of National Treasure. Oh, no, you weren't in that. But you've never been in a movie where a pilot has half his crew and audience and passengers disappear and has got to find out why. And that may be the worst. It's called Gone Away, I think, listeners. It may be the worst movie I've ever seen in my life.
That movie changed his opinion of Nicolas Cage because before he didn't mind him as an actor, and then he watched this highly religious movie about Nicolas Cage. And I was like, no. He won't watch.
No, Nicolas Cage for me now is ruined.
Within my heart, he is dead.
Nicolas Cage is dead to me, literally. But there was
He's not dead, is he?
But he's not dead. He's still alive. He's still alive. I hope he's still alive.
By the time we release this,
I tell you, if this podcast comes out and Nicolas Cage dies, we've got some quick re-editing to do. But it's gone further than that now because I'm now in a position where I on Twitter, and I can't remember the Twitter ID of this person, but on Twitter I was following somebody who had some really insightful comments. You know, on Twitter you go, you know what, you're interesting, I want to find out a bit about you. Yeah. Click on the bio and it said Nicolas Cage fan. I unfollowed immediately. I mean, I'm sorry. If you love Nicolas Cage as an actor, you're in a position where you're dead to me too. You're lost to me. You're not picking good actors. What do you think? Who's the worst actor in the world?
Amateurs.
Amateurs. But look, amateurs are allowed to be bad because they don't actually pay. They don't actually get paid to do it. Nicolas Cage does. What amateurs get paid to act?
Oh, yeah.
That's why they're amateurs.
Not if they're amateurs, but they're good enough to pass and get a minor role in a musical. Or something.
But then they're professionals. That's how it works.
Oh, then they become professionals.
So, let's just sort of slowly move away, shuffle away, because I can see the tumbleweed passing as you think about the transition from amateur to professional. Let's talk. Look, if Nick Cage gets paid per movie, you should get paid to be in the school play. Let's be honest. But let's talk about the question of the podcast. We're going to talk about that first. I've told you about the worst movie I've ever seen, but today's question of the podcast is, what is the worst movie you've ever seen? What do you think, Charlotte?
I don't watch movies if I don't like them. I won't watch a movie if I don't like the description of it.
Yeah, you'd only watch 4 series of a TV programme and go, yeah, not too keen on that now.
3 episodes. if I don't like something within the first 3 episodes, I'll just stop watching it.
Okay.
I have a rule. I'm not allowed. If I don't like it within the first 3 episodes, I just.
But listeners, we're interested in what you think. What's the worst movie you've ever seen? And you can get in touch with us at.
Sorry, I just had a revolutionary idea. At On a Kindness.
Oh, the H has gone again. It was back last week, and now you've got rid of it.
It was intentional.
I'm going to prove I can do the H, and then remove the H, and then maybe bring the H back at a later podcast. Congestion.
The Facebook, you know.
Congestion.
Congestion, yes. The Facebook, you know.
I'll do the Facebook. It's www.facebook.com/holla kindness with the H.
Stop looking at me funny.
And people can get in touch with us directly on Twitter.
Oh, and my Twitter at Charlotte J Dames THARLOTTEJDAEMS.
Elias God Congestion. Or you can get in touch with me at Chris Dames DAEMS. So we look forward to hearing from you. I don't know what that clap was for.
You went to clap.
I don't know how clapping sounds on the podcast, but look what he's doing on the screen. Look. Every time I think we have a bad idea, we just pick one worse. Genuinely. It's like, what should we do on the podcast? We're going to watch YouTube videos and commentate on them. I mean, shocking.
What are we going to do on the podcast? We're going to clap.
Professional podcasts don't do this, Charlotte. They just...
It's a good thing we're amateurs then. We ain't getting paid for this.
We know the difference as well. Okay.
Now we do.
So, listeners, now you know how to get in touch with us, and now you know what the question of the podcast is.
And you know the difference between amateur and professional.
You know the difference between an amateur and pro. This is an amateur podcast you're listening to, by the way.
You can make us.
Listen, if you pay us, we immediately turn professional. Ooh. So it's like that. Maybe there's a business model there, Charlotte. I don't know.
Amateurs pro.
Yeah. Feel free to get in touch with us. Very amateur.
This is very amateur because he's stumbling through everything.
I'm stumbling through everything. Right, and we'll see you next time. Shall we move on to Kindness News?
Yes.
So here we are again at another episode of Would You Like to Do the Jingle?
Kindness News.
Now, it's going high. You just made. I'm looking at this on Audacity, which is what we record this on, podcast listeners, and you just made. Don't try and break my computer. Don't try and smash any glasses. I'm thinking. Last week we talked about putting a drum and bass beat behind the Kindness News.
Yeah, it's not going to work. It just sounds like I'm going douche, 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 douche.
Maybe we should try it with disco.
What, like, you put it over the sound, the track for Dancing Queen? Just
yeah,
like,
maybe.
Dancing Queen.
Kindness News, young and good, only Charlotte Dames is here, telling us the Kindness News.
Huh.
Okay, so that last bit sounded nothing like ABBA. Tell us what edition this week's Kindness News is.
Grub.
What? The insect grub?
No.
Oh, right, okay.
Food grub.
Oh, food news. Kindness News food edition. Tell us your news.
Glasgow food truck tackling crime with kindness.
Okay.
Okay, so basically it's about this cop.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ian Murray, who leads the Street and Arrow project. I'm pretty sure it's a pun on Straight and Narrow.
Because, okay, Street and Arrow.
Street and Arrow. And it's basically, he runs this food truck thing. I think it's a food truck. Anyway, and he takes ex-cons.
Yeah.
And he gets them to work at this place. And he says 90% of the time, these ex-cons change their life.
Awesome, love it.
And
what do they do? How long do they work there?
It is a 12-month traineeship, but they can work on further than that.
Okay.
And he's saying that it gives them the experience to go out and get a job because sometimes what all these people need is comfort and somewhere where they feel like they belong.
Yeah.
And I think that's what he's giving to them in a sense. He says that he would treat them like he would treat his 12-year-old daughter, because he needs to make them feel safe, because that's where they're developing, because they didn't get the proper development when they were younger, because usually stuff happens in childhood.
Well, you know what? We're interviewing a guy who runs a charity later on in an episode. I've interviewed him already, and we're just waiting for the right time to release the podcast. But he runs a charity called Product of a Boats Code, and he works a lot with street gangs in London. And one of the things that he said is certainly a lot of these guys in gangs are looking for communities. They're looking for homes. They're looking for places where they can feel a sense of belonging. And sometimes if you give people opportunities, you develop that sense of belonging, right?
Yes, that is true.
So what do they do? They give them a job in the
food industry, and they teach them how to work in the food industry, how to cook, how to clean, how to stay hygienic. And that gives them the opportunities, even after they've been in prison, to go and work somewhere else, because they have work experience and they have recommendations from people who are in the government, like the police. Yeah,
so it's a police-run project. So
yes.
What was its foundings? What was it?
I believe it was based off one in Los Angeles.
A project in LA, that did.
That was it. And they did it with churches instead, so people would go and help in churches, and that would reform them.
Yeah.
But I think I like the idea of people working in kitchens, because after you've worked at a church, what work experience is working in a church?
Well,
communication, I suppose, but...
Yeah, I wouldn't underestimate what you could learn in working with the church, but certainly I like the idea of the police trying different things to provide people with the opportunities to get back to work, build the skills, and just rebuild their life. I love it. Thank you very much, Charlotte.
Yep.
So this week we're finishing off our interview with Tasha. Part two. I mean, we talked for over an hour, so we talked about loads and loads of really good stuff. And in this part of the Tasha Wahl interview, we talked about art as a way to be more kind. Do you think art's got a part to play in being more kind, Charlotte?
I think it can show people the true meaning of kindness if done properly.
Yep. We're going to talk a little bit about micro-philanthropy. I can't say the word. Micro-philanthropy. And we're going to test Tasha on the questions of the podcast. Do you want to hear it?
Yes, please.
So I've got two questions on that. So number one is how important is play in that sort of being more creative, and number two, how tough it, because I run a small business and I believe in creativity as a small business. How difficult a message is that in corporate America or England, or because they're not known for being particularly playful.
No. So the first part of your question, how important is play? It's as important as discipline. So I think it's a 50-50. I think we become so structured in our lives at work and at school.
Yeah.
They bring us into class with citizen straight lines. They teach us to read.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah.
It's just about the work. Without the play, we become lockstep conformity, and we all come up with that one right answer, which gets us the good grade, but that's not creating the kind of thinkers that we're going to
Exactly. Yeah.
That's coming, like we talked about a little bit earlier with artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
With the advent of how quickly everything's moving with the law of singularity, we've got to have creative thinkers that are going to be able to think and dream. Conversely, on the other hand, if you just play all the time and you don't have discipline, you don't have structure to that creativity, it just goes, it's a cloud, it's ethereal, you can't hold on to it. So
gotcha.
It's equally important to have both. One of the things that we talk about in the keynote that Eric gives right now, he's talking about there's this concept of the world needs dreamers and the world needs doers.
Yep.
We need both of those. But how amazing would it be if each of us could be dreamers that do?
Yep.
So if think it's so important to cultivate both of those things. That's how this is actually going to work, by not being one or the other.
Yeah, exactly.
Secondly, how easy is that to apply? A little bit easier in my experience in corporate America than it is in Europe. I've done a couple conferences in Europe and spoken there. I think in the United States, we tend to have a little bit more of an open entrepreneurial mindset.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
In Europe, I think because you're family-run businesses, and there's a history there that we don't have here. And I think if you're an entrepreneur in Europe, and this is based on, like I said, I've only done a couple of conferences there, but there's not a sense of wonder and excitement and wow if you're an entrepreneur. In the United States, if you say, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a creativity expert, I want to do something different, everybody kind of stands up and says, wow, that's so cool.
Gotcha.
I don't get the same experience in the UK or anywhere in Europe. I think the UK is a little bit different than the rest of Europe as to being open to it.
Yeah.
But it's hard to break out.
So I think you're right. I think America certainly sort of leads the field in entrepreneurial thinking. I absolutely sort of believe that. But certainly I think a lot of the large corporates in the UK are certainly sort of stuck in the industrial era when it comes to both, and education too. Education. I mean, it's really interesting that we're teaching our kids for a 20th century economy when actually the world's changing so fast. But shall we go back to talk about kindness? Because we could talk about future economies for ages. I'd love to do that, but yeah, maybe we save that for a different podcast. But do you think art has a part to play in generating feelings of generosity and kindness, and if so, what?
Well, I think that art. So, is the question, can art generate kindness?
Yeah. So what part has art got to play in generating kindness?
Okay, that's a great question, and I actually feel like I have an answer because we've done this.
Okay.
So one of the things that Eric and I decided to do about 10 or 12 years ago is stop selling all of his artwork.
Okay.
So he creates these amazing paintings in 3 minutes. He's a performance artist. So
Okay.
he gets up on stage in front of these big corporate audiences, and a video goes on, let's say a 3.5-minute video, and he creates a painting in that 3.5 minutes.
Okay.
This creates a buzz. He does 3 paintings during every program, and people kept saying to us, how much is that painting? How much is that painting? How much is that painting? I want to buy that painting. And we realized that putting a dollar value on art felt icky to us. It did not feel good to say, this is how much I value this piece of art. We wanted art to be for the masses, for everybody. So we decided we weren't going to sell, we weren't going to show, we weren't going to reproduce any of the art.
Okay.
Instead, we were going to see what we could do if we only used it to help raise money for charity.
Cool.
So in essence, we pulled it all off the market. We made it not available to anyone unless you brought Eric in to speak. We gift the paintings to the client, and they in turn donate, have a charity auction to raise money for charity.
So Tasha, Eric's doing these on stage as he's presenting, right?
Yes, correct.
Awesome.
And then those paintings then are auctioned off for charity. So it is not uncommon for me to get a phone call a couple times a week from a private individual or a CEO saying, how much I want that piece of art. How much is it? And I get to say, it's not for sale.
Yeah.
And they say, no, really, how much is it? And I say, no, really, it's not for sale. We only use the paintings to raise money for charity.
Cool.
So that's one way that you can use art for good. And I think that was kind of one of the questions that we had is, can we take this? I mean, art is so subjective.
Yeah, right? Absolutely.
Put a price on art. How do we at least use that as a catalyst to raise awareness and money for charity? For me, the butterflies that I create, first of all, they're beautiful. And as I'm learned to let go of them and not make them all about me and my art, it's a stencil that I'm sending out to other artists.
Yeah.
They're share their art with their communities. That art then represents a charity that they would like to amplify.
Yep.
we're using this, you can't help but stop when you see one of these butterflies. They're so huge and they're so obviously.
Well, I'm going to be. I mean, obviously, Tasha, I'm going to be searching London's toilets to find one, but. Loo, toilet loo, whatever you want.
Whatever you want to call it.
We don't live in Victorian London, Charlotte. They're not called latrines anymore.
I'm trying to be.
Yeah, so that sounds awesome. Just a side question. What's your favourite piece of art?
That I've done, or just in general?
Just in general.
Like the Mona Lisa?
Yeah.
Just in general?
Yeah.
Probably Monet's water lilies, because
Oh.
it's a massive piece and you get lost inside of it.
Oh, so much. We went to Monet's house last year, and it was incredible, wasn't it, Charlotte?
Yes.
Because the garden, Monet's garden, is the water lilies brought to life. It's incredible. It's about 100 miles out of Paris. It's a bit of a drive out of Paris, but certainly next time you're in Europe, visit Monet's. Yeah. Have you been or not?
No, I have not. But when we come to Paris in March, we'll be there in March and May, and I think I may try and make that time.
Yeah, definitely. It's a bit of a drive out of town, but certainly worth doing. Interestingly, we went to see Mona Lisa in the Louvre, and we thought it was a bit underwhelming, didn't we, Charlotte?
Yeah.
I think Mona Lisa is a little bit overrated. However, I was in New York in October, and I saw Starry Night by Van Gogh, and honestly, that blew my mind. And I got told off by a security guard because I got too close to it because I was loving it so much. I got a little bit close, and he had to tell me to move back a bit.
It is a stunning piece, and I agree with you. It's one of those things where you kind of laugh when you get to the Mona Lisa because you're like, wait, that's it?
I know.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah.
You have to be so far away from it. If you loved Starry Night, have you guys seen Loving Vincent yet? The biographical.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? We've got it. Is that the one that was hand painted, where they hand painted every frame?
Yes.
Oh, honestly.
We've seen like the first 10 minutes, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we're gonna. That's on our list to watch. So.
Put it on your list.
I will do.
Can I say something?
Yep, of course you can.
Okay, so I consider like writing a form of art because like I actually want to write books for a living when I'm older, and I always wanted to use my books to kind of get the message across that kind of people don't always understand other people, like other emotions. I think if we could use stories and art to help people understand other people, it could help them help other people in a sense.
Yeah, so gain a perspective on other people,
gain a perspective
right?
through characters in stories and books and people who are in similar positions as you, who something happened to them and it makes their life a little bit worse or a little bit better, and it helps you understand.
Well, you think about it, novels do that incredibly well. Yeah. Harry Potter did that fantastically, didn't it? Because it gave people characters that you could identify with, really. Yeah. Cool. So...
I think that's such a great point, though, that we oftentimes think of art as a visual art form, but I agree with you completely. And
storytellers are art issue as well.
A more creative answer to the question would have been if I could have come up with a piece of music or poetry or my favorite book or my favorite film, because you're right, art it's our connection to the creative side of ourselves, right?
Yeah, gotcha.
Inside of us, and so I think that's beautiful, and I'm excited to see what you come up with, because I think your generation, I don't know about you guys, but the book industry is a little tiny bit archaic, and I think there has to be new platforms and new ways of releasing, almost like blogs. But I think back in, didn't Louisa May Alcott release most of her books in periodicals? So it would come out, or Dickens did the same thing.
Well, Charlotte, you use an app called Wattpad, don't you?
Yeah, I post online.
So Charlotte uses a platform called Wattpad where every time she writes a chapter, she posts it. And it's very periodical in nature.
So I post a chapter a week and they're 500 words, I'm currently working on a romance novel.
Are we using this to publish your next story? We'll put a link in the show notes. Okay, so I really like on your website it talks about be the change you want to see. How does that embody itself in the work you do?
Yes, because we each have the opportunity to make a difference in our daily lives, our weekly lives, our monthly lives. But if each of us took those two questions, what lights you up and what breaks your heart, and you did something about that, then that's intrinsically what you were put here to do. I don't think that it does any good. If you don't want to feed the homeless, don't go feed the homeless. If you don't want to give money to the hurricane aid relief, don't do it. When you find something that you're passionate about and that lights you up and you start putting your time and effort into changing that actually, it's contagious. People feel the authenticity in it. And that will change the world. So we're responsible to listen to what we're being called to do in the world, not to being guilted or forced into doing something that we don't want to do because we're supposed to volunteer, we need it on our resume, or it looks good to other people.
So you're talking about finding stuff that's authentically you, right? That authentically represents you. Yeah,
and when you do that, it really does have that ripple effect. Each need to, and I think that's a lot of times it's that question, what breaks your heart? Like, what is so messed up in the world that you can't see continuing to happen? If you can even change one person's life, that's enough. That's enough. So you have to be responsible for being the change.
Yeah, great.
Do that, and it will continue to ripple out.
Okay, and tell me, I know you started the project talking about I look at the website about micro philanthropy. Can you explain what that means? Because it's a term I've not heard used before.
Yeah, absolutely. So micro philanthropy is a way that any person can give back. So even if you're a 10-year-old, and let's just say you got $50 for your birthday from your grandparents, and you were trying to think of, I can go and buy this new thing, or I'm going to say that if you take 10% of that $50 and you give it to the streets of homeless, you're actually making a difference. So micro philanthropy is the idea that small amounts given are better than nothing at all.
Gotcha.
So a lot of times people get overwhelmed. They're like, if I'm going to give, I have to give away some large amount. I have to make some large donation, or I have to go volunteer my whole weekend instead of volunteer a half hour. We won't do it unless we think that it's manageable in small chunks.
But you know what? Everybody. I mean, we've been on this project now for weeks now, haven't we? And thinking about it for a few months. But the more people we talk about kindness, the ones they appreciate the most sometimes are not the big, grand gestures. They're a smile. They're holding the door open for somebody. They're buying somebody a can of Coke, or those tiny little things that we can do more of every day that actually build up to make a big difference.
Yes.
So we're nearly at the end of our interview, but what we do on the podcast, we always have a question of the podcast.
There we go.
Now, these are not normally, Tasha, kindness related, but we're just curious people, so we just like to ask our interviewees some interesting questions. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
Good. What?
Light round.
This is like the quick fire round, right? So let's go through a few of them. What's the best use of an egg?
I'm glad you find us amusing.
We can give you some suggestions. Is it an omelette? Is it boiled? Or is it Cadbury's creamed?
100% poached inside of toast.
So I've had two interviewees who have said poached with sourdough bread on toast. So that's good. What country is on the top of your must-visit list?
Ooh, I have not yet been to New Zealand. I'd love to.
Me neither. Yeah, well, I've got as far as Malaysia, but not any further. So Australia and New Zealand are still on my list. Charlotte, do you want to ask one?
if you became supreme ruler of the world, what's the first rule you'd put in place? Oh, I remember this one.
These are such great questions. I would immediately put a 10% sharing tax on everybody's income.
See, I don't think that's the worst move in the world. A tithing tax to make sure that we can do more good. I like that idea. What's the most inspiring movie ever?
Oh my goodness.
Don't say anything with Nick Cage in it.
We've
The most inspiring movie ever? Oh my gosh, I love film so much. You know what? I have to say that the one that really struck me in the last year that I've seen is Fences, and it's a little bit backwards why it's so inspiring. I came out of that movie so frustrated and angry that I spent 2.5 hours watching the movie for such horrible characters, and it took me 2 days, and then I came back and realized that the main character that Viola Davis plays...
Was that Denzel Washington as well? He directed it, didn't he? Yeah.
And the main character, the wife in it, shows the most beautiful restorative versus retributive love. So she ends up being the most kind and forgiving and restoring person in the movie to something so terrible. And I feel like any kind of film that talks about that, about being a Martin Luther King or a Gandhi, any restorative love character, that's inspiring to me.
So inspiration through adversity, right? That sort of being treated, resilience, being treated badly, but still being loving. What's your favourite piece of trivia ever?
Oh my goodness, this is a lightning round and it's so hard. My favorite piece of trivia ever. I don't know. I'm gonna have to pass on that one. I can't come up.
Fine, no worries. That's a really difficult one, isn't it? What ancient civilization would you go back in time to visit?
Ooh, honestly, I would ancient.
Yep.
Can I go Victorian?
Of course you can. No worries.
Okay, that's not really ancient. I would love to go back actually to Victorian England with Victoria and Albert, and not be one of the rich or wealthy in the castle, but actually be one of the regular people.
Is that so you can do more butterflies on toilets? I mean, this is getting ridiculous now.
Okay, I want to know one. If you had your own gang, what would you call it?
Say that again?
If you had your own gang, what would you call it?
If I had my own game, what would I call it?
Gang. So if you had your own group of people, a sort of gang, what would you call it?
These questions are so hard.
I know, they're good, aren't they?
This one's inspired by me.
I would call it Unthink.
Unthink. The Unthink gang, I like that. Okay, and I've only got 2 more left. Okay. What would your superhero name and superhero power be?
My superhero power would for sure be to fly.
Okay.
That just would be so cool. And my superhero name, I don't know. Wonderfly.
Wonderfly. I like that a lot. So Tasha came on to talk about kindness, and we're throwing these random questions out.
I thought I was good at lightning round, but I'm beginning to rethink that.
Well, you haven't heard some of our questions. And the most contentious question of the podcast that we ask everybody: what's your favourite biscuit?
My favorite is a biscuit a cookie?
Yeah.
Did I have to already ask that? Oh.
It's a biscuit a cookie.
I would have to go with chocolate chip oatmeal.
Oh, chocolate chip oatmeal. We don't have that. Have you ever had a chocolate chip oatmeal?
Yeah, I have.
Oh, I'm the only.
You usually find oatmeal and raisin together. So.
Okay, and we've been recording a new podcast episode today with a new question of the podcast. So you're the first person to hear this. Okay. Who's your favourite Muppet?
Miss Piggy.
Oh, so for Charlotte, it was you like Fuzzy, don't you?
Fuzzy.
And
oh, he's awesome.
And for me, it was just it's got to be Animal. Animal's the best Muppet ever.
Animal rocks. She's awesome. I just like Miss Piggy because she is ridiculous and she makes me laugh. So if I ever got in my head and thought I was all that, I just picture myself as Miss Piggy and say, that takes me off my little...
Gotcha, yeah.
And she doesn't take anything from any of the boys either.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. She's a bit of a feminist icon, is Miss Piggy, isn't she, really?
She is.
Yeah. So we've just gone through, in the UK, we've just gone through the 100 years of women getting the vote. So on the TV at the minute, there's loads of talk about the suffragette movement and women getting the vote and stuff like that. So it's quite an interesting time for women. It's a good time for women any time. But
very proud.
Yeah. Where can people find out a little bit more about you, Tasha?
You can find me on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter. Our website is thebutterflyeffectbethechange.com.
Okay.
And if you're interested in putting up a street art graffiti butterfly somewhere, you can email us from the website or contact us on social media.
Okay.
And if you're interested in finding out more about the little wooden butterfly drops, it's the same thing. All of the clues for the geocache for charities are all on social media. Yep. And anytime anybody wants to put up a new butterfly, I am up for sending you a stencil.
That is absolutely awesome. Thank you for your time today. Really appreciate it. And I think me and Charlotte are going to be wandering around Shoreditch looking for a toilet sometime soon.
I can't wait for you to find one of my butterfly loops.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you guys so much for having me. It's been a complete pleasure meeting both of you. I've laughed more than I have on any other podcast, so thank you so much.
Well, we aim to please, Tasha. Thanks for getting involved.
Aim to make your belly rumble with laugh.
So I'm glad you enjoyed it, and I'll send you a link. The book. So I'll send you a link to David Hamilton's book because that's really worth a read. And when you're in Paris, definitely go and see Monet's house because that was our visit as well. But thanks so much for getting involved. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
See you soon. Have a good day.
Thanks, you too. Bye.
So that was the last, the second half of the Tasha Wahl interview. She's still a bit awesome, isn't she?
Still a bit awesome.
I'm sure we're going to get Tasha on again.
It's over.
It's over again. But the end is never the end, is it?
The end is always the end. The end is never the end. The start is never the start. The end is never the end. Left is never right, and left is never right.
I don't know what
I was supposed to say left is never left and right is never right, and it's like I end up saying left is never right and right is never left. It's like, sorry.
I don't know what any of that means, but thank you for your comment. So it is the end of the podcast, but we have got one more item of business to deal with.
Oh yes, I almost forgot about this. Last week, this week. Question of the podcast.
And this one is, for geeks like us, Charlotte, is a bit of an awesome one. And it's, what's your favourite computer or video game character? Remind everybody what your favourite computer video game character
I actually struggled this one. I never picked one because I like character-based games, so of course I have a lot of favourite characters, and a lot of the characters I like to sit and I like to fangirl over, and I like to go, oh my god, they're so adorable, I'm sad they had to die. I like to do that, and I also go, oh my god, they should have been a couple, and it's just like, it's such a fangirl thing to do. It's a very modern fangirl thing to do. It loves loads of characters.
Would you consider yourself a fangirl?
Yes, I would.
Okay.
I would consider myself a major fangirl.
And okay, so you still haven't answered the question, even though you admitted your fangirldom. What's your favourite?
I'm stuck between three, and they're all from the same series. It'd be Kyoko Kirigiri, Danganronpa, Chiaki Nanami, and I have a strange love for it's the newest game that's come out, and I can never remember the name of the characters, but I have a strange love for the ultimate the ultimate entomologist.
Okay.
Just because he's so innocent and gullible, and he just believes everything everyone says.
But for any of our listeners who don't know much about Japanese RPGs, and most of you probably don't, and I certainly don't, did you understand any of that? Because I didn't, to be honest.
Well, Kyoko is the ultimate detective, and she has like amnesia and stuff.
Right.
Chiaki.
She's not the ultimate detective then, is she?
No.
She's a bit of a rubbish detective. If
She solved 5 murders in the space of a week, so yeah.
I know who did the murder. Who? I forgot.
No, she has amnesia about her past.
Ah, right.
Chiaki Nanami is the ultimate gamer.
Okay, yeah, okay. Right, we will definitely talk about Japanese
Love it.
RPGs in a future episode. Maybe on a spin-off on podcast all about Japanese anime.
Yes, I would be very happy.
I might not be the best co-host to do it with you, Charlotte. I think you're better off.
I'll pick one myself.
pick one yourself. You're better off talking to somebody who knows about this sort of stuff. But let's look at what other people said, shall we?
Yes.
As this is listeners' questions. And what I did last week, I mixed it up a bit and said, what's your favourite thing, and what TV show made you laugh, and what's the thing that made you smile most this week? This week I said, what's your favourite computer game character, and what's the biggest compliment you've got this week?
Ooh.
So let's start with the individuals who just told us about their favourite computer game characters. First, Russ said he loves a strategy game, so he loves SimCity and Civ 4. No characters in those really, but he liked it. John loved Lara Croft. And Wallace, who's a brand new... Wallace at Wallace I am on Twitter said Andrew Ryan, and from BioShock.
Is that the game with the little girls? And
It's the game with the big daddies and the little girls. It is awesome. And then Matt Warren had a few. He's going all retro. He said Ikaru Warriors, Double Dragon, I Kung Fu, or obviously Street Fighter.
Obviously
Street Fighter. Now, there was a couple of people who got a bit confused about the two questions. So one of them was, just as a recap, what's your favourite video game character?
Yes.
The next one is, what's the biggest compliment you've ever received? Kath Keat, friend of the show. Said, number one, my favourite video game character is Mario. The biggest compliment she's had this week is, you look just like Mario. So obviously she loves Mario so much, looking like Mario is a massive compliment. And then Chris Budd came out with an interesting one, because Chris Budd turned around and said, that's easy, Duke Nukem. Catchphrase, your face, your arse, what's the difference? Now he mentioned this on Twitter, and there was a few people who were confused about the fact that whether that was the compliment or not. But it doesn't sound like a particularly good compliment, but certainly that's the thing.
I mean, unless it's saying both are beautiful. I mean...
True, and that could be the case.
You got a beautiful butt, you got a beautiful face, doesn't matter either way.
Job done. They're interchangeable, they're so lovely.
Yes, you've got perfectly sculpted features on your butt.
Yeah, you've just...
It's good.
It's a bit weird having a face for a butt, but it's all good. They're both very attractive. But actually, he did come out with the best compliment he had this week, which was somebody said he was the best speaker they'd ever heard.
Aww.
And our old friend of the show, Mikey Fitzgerald, said, this is a hard one, give me 2 minutes. So he went away, thought about it, and then
came back and
commented again. And he said, okay, you've got your iconic ones, you've got your Marios, you've got your Sonics, you've got your Master Chief, you've got all that sort of stuff. But for him, it was, and he was tempted to go down the anime route, so he was going to cheat and say Naruto. But
oh no! What are you on about?
But
we're not talking Shippuden, are we? Because those games are awful.
Look, I tell you what, I'm gonna let you take that up with. I'm going to let you take that up with Mikey, to be honest.
Don't talk about the shipping games in front of me.
I don't even know what that means. But as far as who he thinks is the best character, he'd go with Senua from Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. And he said, whilst everyone's trying to make games prettier and more violent, I feel storytelling and character development, which is a conversation we've had,
Yes.
are more important than ever.
Thank you.
No. So 1 minute you don't agree with Mikey, but now you do. Okay. As a game, you'd expect me to complete every game, but I got so bored in single player games, I've maybe completed 6. Senua was written with advice from people who have psychosis and neuroscientists and psychosis experts. You literally hear her thoughts, and it's so well acted, dark, and so beautiful at points. Probably the greatest game character and gaming experience I've ever felt. It had a lasting effect on me and was so brave to approach mental health and make you see how strong people who can struggle are. Now that's really interesting to me, because I think gaming as a medium has huge amounts of potential.
Yes.
And one thing it often ignores is mental health. And Senua's Sacrifice is a brave step. I haven't played it yet, but I've heard a lot about it, and certainly I'm going to be...
I'm playing it too.
I'm going to be playing it at some point in the future. And to finish off, I got a little compliment today. I've been doing a lot of writing for the business, and Alexandra Riley said, "You've put out a lot of good content recently." And I went, "Thanks, that's a really nice compliment."
You put out some nice content recently, Chris.
You've been doing some good writing. Thanks, Alex. I appreciate it. So that is the end of the show, officially. And we will...
Bye. Bye, guys.
See you next week.